Cool. Feeling good. All right, welcome back to the
Like,
Movie Whale Marathon. I'm Andrew.
a Mac.
Merry Christmas, everybody. It is Christmas week.
Woo!
I can't. This will go 2 days, I think, before Christmas.
Jingle bells,
So
jingle all the way.
heck yeah. We also, happy holidays in general, just to piss off Fox
True.
News. Because whatever you're celebrating, have a good time. We're
Or
all here
or
for it.
in a positive spin, we actually want to wish everyone a happy
We do,
holiday.
genuinely we do, but also it'll piss off Fox News. So happy holidays. What all is it? So happy Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy
hmm
Kwanzaa, happy
hmm
Saturnalia, Merry Saturnalia. I don't know.
Mm,
Happy
I think it's
pagan
happy.
something or other. Happy New Year coming
Saturnalia.
up, and Merry Winter Solstice for all those that don't celebrate any of those things.
I think no, I think that already passed. Never mind.
All right. So yeah, we are continuing our fun, weird little marathon of the Grinch movies. We are on How the Grinch Stole Christmas from the year 2000. Good God. Directed by Ron Howard, starring Jim Carrey. You know it. You've seen it. We all love it. But we're going to take a
Very true.
critical eye to it, which is going to be an interesting conversation. Um,
This is going to be a very interesting
this is going to be a very
conversation.
interesting conversation. So, yeah. How would you like to start with this one in particular? Because this was an interesting experience.
hmm
I feel like I have a kind of an interesting relationship with this movie,
Okay.
and taking a look at it in this way, in the context of the other Grinch movies, was almost bizarre.
Mm.
And I don't know. I'm excited to discuss it. I think there's a lot to break down here.
I have a lot of questions for the
Mhm.
people who made the film, and not in like a "What did you think you were doing?" kind of way, more in like a "How did you do this?"
Mhm.
kind of way, because the original Grinch story is super simple. It's a
Mhm.
personal story of growth. It is a morality tale, but it has largely to do with one character's decisions and sort of like feelings about Christmas and sort of realizing that there was not a need to be as grumpy about things as it is. This takes all of those elements, dials them up to 11, makes them ridiculous in ways that are sometimes hard to stomach,
Mhm.
and yet manages to communicate very positive and effective themes
Mhm.
about consumerism
Mhm.
and isolation and social like prejudice
Mhm.
and oh there was another one that I had. Oh, like the impact of wealth and corruption in a society. Like all of that is present.
Mhm.
And while they're cartoonish, it's almost like a play or making fun of all these things. It's also kind of valid. Like the
Mhm.
way that they tell the story is effective.
Yes. Yes.
It's a
But
lot.
there's I agree, but I also feel like there's some buts in
Oh,
all
for
that.
sure.
So I yes, I that's good. I think that's gonna be the bulk of this. Is I feel like there is a genuine attempt here at a conversation. I don't
hmm
know though if it was ever really successful, and I
Okay.
don't know if it's because you can't succeed in having that conversation with the kind of movie they made, or if it's just because it's the Grinch, or if it's because it's Jim Carrey. No hate. Or if it's because
Mhm.
they just half-assed it in the end. Because like when they're trying to do it, they really seem like they're doing it, but they never
Mhm.
follow through. And we'll elaborate further. But before we get too far into it, I want to say right off the bat, I really enjoy the set design. I feel immersed in this
Mm.
Dr. Seuss Whoville
Yeah.
world. I have like a list of movies in my head that I love, even if it's good or bad. Like even if it's bad, just because I feel like they went all out with feeling like we're in that world, and this is one of them. The big, weird, nonsensical staircases that are just crossing over things for no reason. The weird, twisty doors, and just everything. They built Whoville.
Mhm.
there's a little bit of this world feels like a set because it
Sure.
is. So there's a little bit of that. It's also 24 years old, but all that looks good. The makeup's pretty solid. I like the design of the Grinch for the most part. I like the reveal of the Grinch. They hold back for a second. We
Yeah.
get kind of a dramatic reveal, which is fun. Um,
That I've noted the camera work
mm,
was carrying a lot of the weight,
mhm.
especially in the beginning of the film, like the swinging shots and like the sort of
Yes.
like canted angles that we were getting, a whole bunch of like how you were supposed to feel about what you were seeing in the scene was communicated through the camera work,
Hmm.
which was very dynamic and very different from the animated cartoon
Of
that we
course,
had
yeah.
previously. Like they kind of like swing you right into it immediately. They're like, we are moving in a real environment, which I think leads to back to what you're saying about the sets. It's just like everything feels
Hmm.
immersive in a way.
It does,
It
yes.
it's a little bit set-ish because of how cartoonish everything is, but
Right. You
it
can
is
only make it so big, but
mhm,
I think they succeed with what they had to work with. Um,
mhm.
that being said, yeah, I don't necessarily want to hop right into like the deep commentary on their maybe failed commentary, but
Mm.
there's do you want to get like some positives out of the way? Do you want to discuss some nitpicks, or do you want to get into the meat and potatoes, the who
Well,
roast beast, if you will?
before we get there, we should probably lay out what we generally like about the
Okay.
general structure of the film so that we
Okay.
get some context in first.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Real quick, I think this movie is genuinely funny. I really,
Mm.
really do. There are some there
Interesting.
are some jokes that I absolutely love. Now, when I was a kid, I hated this movie. I thought it was obnoxious. Through college, I was like, this movie slaps. I could quote the whole thing. And there are several jokes that I just love. The story of how the Who's are born, and the guy's like,
Yes.
our baby's here. He looks just like your boss. Like, I love that when the Grinch is at the Whovilation and he's doing the pudding eating contest. He's like, "This is not pudding." It's like, what is it? That like all of
Yeah.
it. I love all of that. There are several others just throughout the movie. It's because I'm green, isn't it? Like Jim Carrey is clearly having fun, and I genuinely
Oh,
appreciate that. Um,
he's trying to have
Yes,
fun.
well,
He
I want to reference that story because I actually have an
yeah.
adjacent story to that story, and I want to talk some shit, but that's for later.
Mm,
Um, I think it is funny. I like the environment. I genuinely like that Cindy Lou Who's a character in this one. I like her
yes.
character. I like
Well, she's
her.
like a full-on investigative
Yes, I
journalist.
know, and
Like,
I like that. I like that reason we get flashbacks and more context in the story. I think that was really
mhm,
clever. I enjoy that. The expansion of the Grinch's whole vibe and the loneliness and applying background to him, I think that works
agreed.
mostly. I think it's interesting that I don't know this is a positive or negative necessarily. I think this is something that's debatable. I think it's funny that in the original, Max is essentially comic relief because the Grinch is terrifying and like evil, but this whole movie's a comedy, so Max is like a heart comfort relief. He's like the only good guy other than Cindy
Yeah,
Lou
he's
in this whole movie.
like trying to be a moral compass for the
Yes.
Grinch at times, and
It's
he's just a
so
dog.
yeah, it's so funny and sweet, but it's nice that they did that. I imagine they did that intentionally because you can't have him be
Mhm,
a goofy, funny sidekick character when the Grinch is the goofy silly sidekick character, but just being silly. Oh, that's the
mhm.
other joke. The hating the Who's alphabetically.
Yes. I
Loathe entirely. Like I want to know who that was.
the for me, the continual, like, use of bits in this film was really good because
Uh-huh.
usually the really genuinely funny moments in a film well, maybe not usually, but often, the really funny moments in a film come from, like, the moment when they were filming it, they improvised something 'cause, like, the energy and the vibe was there, and the actor picked up on it, and they said something, right? Um, to have a printed Whoville phone book prop and stand on top of a mountain and film this guy hating people alphabetically shows so much forethought, not only for the character, but also for the people who are creating that scene. It's hilarious. The bit where he's like directing Max as like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
I love that part so much.
You project your own nose.
Yes. You project your own nose because it represents the whatever of commercialism. It's so great. Yeah, all of it. And then like the part where he's like creeping over the mountain face and then does like that seal move where he's up on his stomach. Can you imagine that was the first take and everyone on set just lost it because why would he do that? Ugh. It's so good. It's so good. The clothing bit with the lederhosen and the kilt. I don't know if this is like an urban legend or not, but I thought I had heard or read somewhere that when he pulls the sheet off the table, that wasn't supposed to be successful, and that's why he turns around and throws everything, because like it wasn't supposed to be perfect. Do not quote me on that. Do not quote me.
That's hilarious. Either way, if they wrote it that way or if it was improvised, both are so funny.
Yeah,
so
it really
it's fine.
Is. See, I think that's the thing.
I think
go
for me,
ahead.
that's where some of the weaknesses of the film do start to show a little bit. I think those moments are brilliant. I think they're really funny. There are some jokes for me that just do not land or make me like super uncomfortable rather than making me laugh.
What you got?
Kind of a basic one. You mentioned like the pudding competition. That whole like food competition like scene. It makes me like viscerally recoil.
Me too. I just
I'm
think it's
so unhappy.
Yeah.
And
no, being in that situation is awful. Yeah. I can't imagine doing that.
And then I don't know. I waffle a little bit on this because I think it was a conscious choice that the film made. I think I just end up not liking it. But like Martha's character, I like her story on paper. I hate the way that she is used in the scenes.
So I agree. Because I kind of like that there's a character that does like the Grinch for the Grinch. I don't like how sexualized it is.
I like how silly she is. I like how she's like the one to catch, right? Like I don't mind the archetype or even stereotype that they're playing with that character. I guess I hate how sexual it is for a kid's film.
Absolutely. Like I didn't think about this until watching it this time. The flashbacks in the school when she's looking at him and giving him eyes and she's got a lollipop. I just wouldn't have done that. Even if that's not what they're going for, I don't like that. That's a little much. And no kid is going to catch that. But I did not like that this time around. And then he lands on her chest when he flies into Whoville. And like, yeah. I
was seeing all of that as a kid. I didn't fully understand all of it, but I was uncomfortable often when she was on screen, which is annoying because, again, I do like the way her character is written in the sense that I like having this popular girl character who's like, you know, the one to catch, who has this fascination with the Grinch. I even like that her fascination is a little sick. I think it's kind of fun. But I want it to be played a little bit maybe more respectfully if we're going to be making this a family friendly film. And I think it's clearly designed to be enjoyed by all ages because there's a lot of jokes in here that kids are not going to get. But I would feel better, I think, if we drew a line there.
I feel like, honestly, regardless, Martha May needs at least a half rehaul because by the end of the movie, about halfway through the movie even, she's like one of our positive characters. She is on the side, if you will, of Cindy Lou Who and is giving the Grinch a chance, a genuine chance and all that. She's one of our good characters. But the way she's introduced, she's the bitchy neighbor who is just as materialistic as the Grinch is saying the rest of Whoville is. And she's outdoing the mother of our little character that we've already kind of met and like and know from the lore, if you will, the one book and the cartoon. So it was like, what are we doing here? You know, like I always hated Martha May at first because it's like, okay, Cindy Lou Who, I like Cindy Lou Who, cool. We get home, Cindy Lou Who's mom, like Cindy Lou Who's mom because I kind of have to because I like Cindy Lou Who. Oh, there's someone who is upsetting Cindy Lou Who's mom. Well, that's a bad character. Don't like her. Fuck her. But no, that's not what the movie is saying. That's not what the movie does. So why do we have to have this competition? It doesn't go anywhere. It's just made for
Oh,
the mom to
that's part
have
of the
bits.
conversation.
But like, it's not a conversation that we ever really address because if we
That's
want,
true.
that's the thing I think with the commentary of this movie is that I just there is no real lesson to be learned here, and Whoville is just an army of sheep because the lesson that is supposed to be taken away is that Christmas doesn't come from a store. Christmas is a
Mhm.
little bit more. It's not about wanting. It's not about presents and all that. But at the same time, and I know it's a little different for it being the Grinch and being almost 25 years ago, everything that we see people doing is getting gifts for other people. The Whovilation event is to give a gift to someone else. Like, everyone is getting gifts for their family and their friends. We don't get a lot of, I want this, I want that. The Grinch has to actually say as much for that to be made clear. Yes, there's some overly dramatic and overplayed, dialed up to 11 Black Friday style shopping. But the list that Lou has is an item for every family member. And Cindy Lou Who's like, isn't this a bit superfluous? It's like, okay, thank you, Cindy. Can you elaborate maybe a little further beyond? Because right now it just feels like, isn't it a bit much to get a present for our family members? Because like we don't get what I think is like Lucy and Charlie Brown is laying out what she wants for Christmas. And it's insane. She wants, for one,
Mhm.
real estate. And oh no, is it Lucy? Lucy wants
Power to her.
tens and twenties, and Sally wants tens and twenties, and Lucy wants real estate. And it's avarice. And Charlie Brown doesn't get it. But in this movie, which is having those conversations and those moments, I don't think it's exploring that as well. And the only real negative character we have, I think, is the mayor, because the rest of Whoville is just doing whatever anyone else says to do. Because when it comes to nominating the Grinch for the Whovilation, it's like, I nominate the Grinch. No! It's like, well, actually, yes. Like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. And the mayor's like, oh, no! It's like, yeah, no, no, no. It's like, well, actually, yes. Like, oh, okay, yes, yes. Like, and then they're all
Okay.
upset that Christmas is stolen until Lou is like, actually, you know what? No. And they're like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Like the animated one has the Grinch learning the lesson from Whoville, which feels great. This movie has the Grinch already knowing that this thing is weird, and Whoville just kind of learns it for no reason out of nowhere, and then the Grinch doesn't like he learns it, but I feel like this he learns it the same way the cartoon one learns it, but everything else in this movie is dialed up to 11. So that should have been dialed up to 11. I feel like he should have learned more from Cindy and not just from the town singing again.
I think, hmm, I understood this differently
Okay.
than what you laid out. Yes, you don't see a lot of what I'm going to call individual greed in this film. Usually, the characters are getting things for other people or trying to give things to other people. A lot of the traditions are around celebrations or, fun times, right? There's not a lot of inherent, like, black hole, I'm going to try and be a problem characters, not a lot of antagonists. Um, but that's not I don't think this film is trying to tackle greed. I think this film is trying to wrestle with the impulse and the social requirement of consumerism on Christmas. Um, the reason that everyone's Black Friday shopping, like crazy is because they have to buy presents for everyone they know. The reason he has a comically long list and he's reading it off for everybody is because he's buying an individual present for every person he knows, every person that's in the family. Everyone is so focused on accomplishing this requirement of buying an item that they don't focus on the people who are around them. The like there's no family time in this film. We see the family dress up to go to an event together, but the costumes are extravagant and fancy. And I wonder if there's a deleted scene where they were stressed out about getting ready. And the lights competition is important because not only does it highlight the class difference that creates strife during a consumerism like season like this, but it also like highlights the fact that they're not putting lights up for fun, they're putting lights up to win.
Good point.
And like they're, even having like a Christmas like king, I forget exactly what they call it, but like, one person that gets treated extra special, Cheermeister, he gets treated extra special on Christmas. That's a thing to like win. Obviously not a lot of people in Whoville go for it, but there's like a line there that suggests that maybe the mayor has been changing things around so he gets to feel special on Christmas. So he's taking advantage of a holiday that's supposed to be about your family and making it about him. And when he proposes to Martha May, they turn it into a game show rather than being like, hey, I have affection for you and I want to be with you for the rest of my life. I am trying to win you as a prize, and in return, I give you prizes. Here's this ridiculous diamond and a brand new car. Decide in the next 30 seconds. So like it's all about taking what's supposed to be a very personal interrelationship holiday, spending time with each other, friends and family, walking away from work and all your responsibilities just so that you can spend time with the people that you love. And what's happened in the Whoville society and at large, our society, they're arguing, is that we no longer prioritize those relationships on that holiday. We instead prioritize our obligations or our opportunity to succeed in like at something during that holiday. And I think the film is pretty effective at communicating that. It is a little heavy-handed at times, and it is a little bit odd that the Grinch should be the one like teaching the lesson, but it's a very interesting example of I'm going to say a complicated morality tale, because the Grinch also learns. The Grinch learns that even though he's faced, I'm going to say prejudice before, he shouldn't self-isolate, right? That's what Cindy Lou Who teaches him, is like, there are still people who are out here who want to connect with you, who are, if you give people a second chance, they might protect you from the people who won't help you, there's this constant message that the Grinch shuts down to protect himself, that actually there are people who want to kind of get to know you, but the Grinch won't let it happen because he's been burned before. Just because he happens to be right about Christmas, or has to be right about the way that Christmas has been ruined, doesn't mean that he doesn't also learn something in this film. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece, because there are films that handle this subject better, but to manage, in my mind, to squeeze all this into the film of the Grinch and to not mess it up dramatically is kind of crazy. I hear what you're saying about Whoville just being cheap, but that's often the case with ensemble characters in morality films, especially in kids' films. Like, think about the Lorax.
Fair, but Who's, man, they're just unreliable. I feel like when you're looking at it more under the microscope, which is what we're kind of doing, it technically, I feel like it comes out of nowhere. Like, Cindy Lou, like, the dad has this fun moment with the mayor, and he's like, go screw yourself. Christmas isn't about presents. And Cindy Lou Who has been trying to tell us that. It's like, well, no, she hasn't, actually. She just hasn't. Her arc, her story right now is that she doesn't know what Christmas means to her anymore because she's realizing it herself. She is not elaborating on that or explaining it to other people. That's just not what she's been doing at all. She has one moment when the Grinch blows everything up, and she says, I just wanted everyone to be together on Christmas. That is all she said to anybody else about this idea that Christmas is more than this. That's it. I'm not hating on Cindy. I'm just saying that the realizations that everyone is making in the end it's like they found with the bits and the comedy and this extra story and the flashbacks and all that, they found a way to take a 25-minute short and stretch it into a 2-hour movie, I think fairly successfully, by adding this new stuff. But then the ending is just the animated one. It's just the book,
Mhm.
period. Like, I really wish that Cindy Lou comes into the Grinch's epiphany before the epiphany. I feel like it should be a conversation that triggers the epiphany. A nice, like, a moment between her and him that would be warranted, I feel like, in this movie, since some of the best moments, I think, are just their character interactions. Like, I think the mailroom is great, him stealing the tree and talking to her is
Mhm.
great, and her going up to the cave for the first time is great, all of that.
Mhm.
And for it to end with that, I think would be kind of nice. Not just him and Anthony Hopkins doing really cool God narration, but
Mhm.
more of a conversation to realize that. Because we get to the point where he's just talking to himself to realize that. Maybe have him talk to her. She realized it, and it's helped him realize it. And then you could write some other reason why he goes to save the presents. Or even better yet, you want to keep this theme of dialing it up to 11? Don't save the presents. Let them die
Mhm.
to prove the point.
Mhm.
Because the Who's in the animated one, they wake up and you're like, you know what? This is weird, but all right. And the Grinch is like, you know
Mhm.
what? All right, fine. You fuckers, you get it. Sure. But in this one, it's like, oh, we actually are upset and we're angry and we're sad. And it's like, well, maybe it's not that big a deal. You're right. Okay, here's your reward for that. Like, I feel like the lesson is undercut by immediately bringing it back, and everyone just gets what they want in this movie that is exploring that maybe they shouldn't in this instance. Because again, as we talked about in
Yeah.
the last week, the Who's aren't doing anything wrong in the Grinch in the
Mhm.
last one. They're just existing. And so for them to have their Christmas taken away in that way and then given back, it's not that big of a deal. There's nothing that they need to learn. And this one, I think it would have been kind of cool. They just lost the presents. It was destroyed. They didn't get it. Or when he saves it because he wants to be good, but when they crash, like they really
Yeah.
crash and like everything just blows up. And it's like, I'm so sorry. I brought
Yeah.
them back. And they're like, you know what? It's fine. Let's go have dinner.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Actually, even when I was a kid watching the original Grinch, I guess I was a kid watching this one too, but I knew the original Grinch more than I knew this one. But my thought was, if the author really wanted to drive the point home, they wouldn't have brought back the gifts.
Yeah.
They like it would have been fine without them. Like he should have like burned them in a fire and then heard the song.
Damn.
And
Burn it with
then been like,
fire.
"Oh, there's nothing I can do to bring them back."
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think if we're thinking about it abstractly, the reason the Grinch gets to bring the gifts back is because there is nothing inherently wrong with gift giving on Christmas. Like you
Right.
started out saying, it's a sign of affection. It's a
Mm-hmm.
sign of like, not necessarily respect, but like, hey, I see you. And in our relationship, I'm getting you something that reflects the kind of connection that we have. It's not like every gift is like a super personal insight to the relationship, but it's like, I see you, I know something you would want. It's a positive element in human relationships, and having holidays where we consistently give each other gifts is a good thing for
Mm-hmm.
society.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why he gets to give them back, because once he understands the meaning of Christmas, which is to appreciate the people you have around you, he gets to bring the presents because he understands why there would be presents in the first place. It's about relationship, but in this film it's more complicated, I'll give you that. In the live action one, 2001, the Whoville people have to learn a lesson. And I think I respect this choice because we would associate ourselves with the Who. Like, we're not the Grinch. Um, maybe some of us are as we get older, we feel like we associate more with the Grinch. That's fine. But generally, like society at large is not the Grinch. The Grinch is an outsider. So, in order for them to properly engage with this idea that Christmas is sometimes too much about gift giving and not enough about each other, the Who's have to have a lesson to learn in that area. And I actually think it's rather interesting that instead of focusing on greed, they focus on the social need or the social obligation to engage in heavy consumerism. I mean, they start with like they bring us in all nice at the beginning of the film with establishing shots of Whoville. We kind of like zoom in really close on the snowflake and we get to see sort of the environment and we get to know that like Seuss style world first. But then immediately you're hit with money. It's a cash register going off. It like people are scrambling to buy things. There is like a guy runs a post office and the post office is drowning in
Right.
presents, right? Society is literally like choked with this gift giving process. And it has to do with money and buying things. So I like that the Who's have to learn a lesson here. I like that it's the Grinch that teaches them that lesson. And you might not be wrong about the fact that at the end of the day, these Who's maybe should not have received their gifts back. I don't know if they would have ever done that because again, it is a kids' film, and I think any kid
Yeah.
watching the film would interpret that as a sad ending. But if you really wanted to drive home your point, you wouldn't have brought them back because it wasn't about that. And the whole town had to learn that. So the whole town should not receive their gifts, essentially. Or you change things around and people start giving each other like handmade ornaments or things that
Yeah.
show a little bit more like humility, I guess, or more relationship. So yeah, I guess maybe the film does not fully follow through in the fact that it returns the presents, but I feel like the lesson is still like Cindy Lou Who learns what she thinks Christmas is about, and she kind of teaches that to everybody. The reason the whole town is supposed to understand that is because she keeps dragging the Grinch into the situations, and everyone's like, "Why are we letting her do this? This is terrible." And then it actually goes on for a while, and then somebody says something that sets the Grinch off, and he makes things terrible. And so this balance is like, or not even a balance, it's a struggle really between what Cindy is trying to learn and what the Grinch is trying to learn because Cindy is trying to figure out why Christmas doesn't feel good anymore. Like why it just kind of sucks. Everyone's busy, everyone's tired, no one's happy. And she does that by going to the other person who doesn't really get Christmas because she thinks maybe he has the answer, and he kind of does. But the problem is he doesn't like Christmas either because he's totally skipped the relationship part. He's recognized that presents are a problem and consumerism is a problem, but he's not figured out the fact that relationships are good and Christmas is good if you can focus on the relationship aspect. But she's pursuing a relationship with him. Well, she's trying to be friends with him.
Right.
And that does change his behavior because we're social creatures. We want that connection. So he learns that it's okay. There are people who want to be friends with you, who want to make you a part of their society. There's even someone who has an incredibly embarrassing crush on you. And he can be reintegrated while still kind of teaching the lesson. That's how these two characters work with each other. So yes, the end is abrupt, but I don't think it's bad, I guess.
That's fair. It's also at the end of the day, it's not that kind of movie. It's just because they made the attempt. I don't love that it didn't really make the attempt. You know what I mean? Like this is not a great movie. It is a funny movie. It's not a movie you're supposed to converse this deeply in this kind of way. It's definitely become a cult classic because it's funny and goofy, and there are some cool things to discuss. So like, I get what you're saying, but I can't help but nitpick in that way of like, I see what you were doing, just do more of it. Like, I always want that.
It has to walk the line between the conversation it's having about society and the fact that it's a kid's film.
Yes. Other positives though, just real quick, I do like that we set up that the Grinch is physically stronger, and we do it in a few subtle, believable ways, and we also see it being a feature of his physiology from when he was a child. I do like that. That's kind of fun. He's a terrifying looking child, though, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Let's see, what else? There was something else I thought was kind of interesting about either the flashbacks or something related to the Grinch's. Oh, I don't know. Did you ever catch that it's kind of weird that there's a whole plot point that he doesn't have any clothes to wear, even though he wore a cloak earlier in the movie?
Hmm.
Just wear the cloak, dude. You look cool.
I think it was supposed to be like incognito.
Who cares? Also, that whole moment makes it way more clear that the rest of the time he's just naked, which is
Which is
really weird.
it's really weird.
Really weird.
Yeah, I think that's one of those situations where you're working with a cartoon character technically, so you just kind of get away with it.
Uh-huh.
But the close question with the Grinch is definitely a question
Yeah,
that
because
can,
pants are so often optional, except for the time he went to the party, in which case all he wore were pants. So, yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, uh,
Uh, the performance through all of the makeup
yes.
and the prosthetics
Yes.
is really good.
Yes.
It's really good.
Yes. This is a time where I want to talk some shit real quick. Because the video that everyone has seen and everyone references now, it came out around the same time as this other video from Tim Allen, either on like Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel. So for those that don't know, Jim Carrey talked about how the makeup for the Grinch is insane. It's flammable yak hair, and it took hours and hours and hours to put on. He did it like what, 100 times, 88 times, something like that. He says in the interviews on Graham Norton, he talks about it. And he says the first day, it was so awful, he put his foot through his trailer, told Ron Howard he couldn't do the movie, and then they brought in a guy who trains CIA operatives to withstand torture, and he did the movie, and he kept reminding himself that it's for the kids, it's for the kids, it's for the kids. And through all of that, throughout this movie, there's still the physical comedy, the improv, I imagine, silliness, expressiveness. It's great. You can tell he's having fun. And he, like, it's clear. Now, on the flip side, Tim Allen tells this quote-unquote funny story about how when he was Santa Claus, he was telling people who worked on the movie to keep the fucking kids away from him because they thought he was Santa and they were excited, and he had to be told, like, no, they're not actors, dumbass. They're children, and they think you're Santa. And you can't be smoking that cigarette and swearing when you're around them. You're killing the illusion. So I really appreciate Jim Carrey with all of the hell he went through for this ridiculous, silly movie. And Tim Allen couldn't even... I get they're different people, different kind of comics, but that's just... Dude, come on. This isn't as funny as you think it is, I don't think.
There are real, genuine moments between, like, the Grinch and Cindy Lou Who, and it doesn't feel necessarily acted. I think that actress laughed sometimes because she had they interacted enough where she knew Jim Carrey, she knew him, and he was doing something funny while looking funny, and she thought that was funny, so she would laugh. Like, and she stays in character really well. I'm not necessarily saying that she breaks character, but the interactions between the Grinch and Cindy Lou Who, even though the Grinch is like trying, like, he's got a lot of bluster, he's like trying to scare her or like, pretend like he could do all these terrible things. You never feel like she's in any real danger.
Right.
You never do. And I think that's like, and even just thinking again, kid actor, how does a kid actor look with such positive radiation and like happiness towards the Grinch? If you think about all the things like just being on set, they must have built some sort of rapport with each other, because there are moments that they're just happy. They're just happy in these characters making this film. And it's so sweet. It's so sweet to see that between
absolutely agree. And I think it's fun that they established that very early on, even after he scares her and then saves her, and they have that silly moment of like he's almost parenting her in that moment. It's like, aren't you know you're not supposed to take things from other people? What's the matter with you? Some kind of wild animal? I was like, excuse me, sir, coming from you. Like, their dynamic. I couldn't help but feel if their dynamic maybe somehow inspired to some degree Rick and Morty. Because like I know what Rick and Morty is based on. I get it's a play on Doc and Marty, but the dynamic of the absolutely insane, crazy weirdo and this little innocent child, I was getting Rick and Morty vibes. I really was.
I'm this is the better duo, I'm gonna argue.
Well, of course, yes. It's just there is
But, yeah.
there is that element of like I'm gonna say I don't care about you, but like you can tell, audience member, you can tell that I do, and I wouldn't actually do something to hurt you. Like that is evident throughout the movie. And
what I think. Here, go ahead.
no, I didn't have anything after that. I was just kind of talking.
I think the development, was particularly with Cindy Lou Who and the Grinch in this version of the film, is actually super interesting because it's always, I mean, the original setup is the Grinch is unhappy with life. He's mad. He's grouchy. He goes and steals Christmas. There's a sweet little innocent who shows up, doesn't realize what he's doing, and just acts kind to him. And that's enough to maybe force some introspection later, right? She doesn't have much of an active role played in the original. She just kind of shows up and he pretends to be Santa. And so that, I mean, maybe so he doesn't get caught, and maybe so her, fantasy about Santa Claus isn't totally like ruined. Like she gets to, like, he doesn't say, well, turns out Santa Claus isn't real, and actually ruins Christmas for her, right? He plays along. So in this film, they take that and they definitely add some things, because Cindy Lou Who, like I said, she's basically an investigative reporter in this film. She has this question and she pursues it through hell and high water. And she's like, what is the answer to Christmas? I must know what Christmas is all about. And the Grinch's armor has a little like hole in it. And apparently the thing that gets in is just a sweet little girl, because he can't, like, he has no response. When she shows up and starts bothering him, he's like, I don't know how to handle this. I want to scare you off like I did those teenagers, but you're not scared of me, and you're just being sweet and kind to me. And like, how do I respond to that, right? And hers is, there's this crazy old dude up on the mountain. He acts a little funny, but he doesn't actually like hurt me. He started off by actually saving me from danger, and now he just kind of yells at me when he's upset, but he doesn't actually do much to hurt me. And he has answers, so I'm gonna keep bothering him. And it's this super interesting connection they make between the two of them. I like it a lot. I think it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly that's the best takeaway from this movie, is that the dynamic they made between Cindy Lou Who and the Grinch. That's easily the best part of the movie, because it's some of the funniest moments and some of the sweetest. And yeah, that's a big old positive in my book.
Yeah.
I think after this though as well, so like they made a successful comedy out of it to a degree. And since the last one wasn't really a comedy, I feel like that's more indication you could make a successful horror movie. Like
don't.
You could, because like first of all,
I don't want it.
First of all,
I don't care if you could.
The makeup of the Grinch isn't funny. He's terrifying. All you gotta do is change the direction and the lighting.
The big belly is a little funny.
That's a little bit
weird.
the
pointy fingers and toes is a little funny.
I think the fingers are terrifying. The long fur that creates the illusion of claws. So good. That's creepy. And I like it. I also do wonder if this is only a successful cult classic comedy because it's Jim Carrey. Because if it was someone else,
I do think this film,
I feel like it would just be dumb.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to have that performance carrying you through. Even when he's not on this, like, on screen, there's plenty of earnestness coming from Cindy Lou Who. But let's be honest, she's just kind of asking a question and getting backstory. And then all the Who's act ridiculous. So if you don't have this specific style of Grinch, this Jim Carrey Grinch, I don't I don't think this movie works.
Yeah. It made me think about the Cat in the Hat a little bit more as well. I think they
Mm.
should have just kind of done what was it, American Horror Story did. Just keep using Jim Carrey. Have him be have him be the cat. Have him be any other character. They're covered in makeup. They're never gonna interact. Who cares? Just keep using him. Because the other thing though is that Jim Carrey is a good actor. Like he's got
Mhm.
his thing. He's got his shtick, but he is also an
Mhm.
actor. So like you could have him do the Grinch, and then you could have him do the cat, and be a different kind of funny instead of what is it? Is it Michael Myers or something Myers who is the cat? It's been a long time since I've seen it. But it's not good
I
and
don't.
it's not funny and
I'm not in.
it's clearly trying to mimic Jim Carrey's Grinch, not successfully.
Yeah, I. There's a lot to talk about with that film. Honestly, just talking about Jim Carrey is making me think of the Sonic films, which is crazy because that's not the topic right now. But apparently, he like retired,
Uh
and then
huh.
they said we're doing Sonic 3, and we want you to come back as the
And he
villain.
did,
And he's
yeah.
like, "Yeah, I'll do it."
He's chill. He's chill. I appreciate that.
Yeah, he lives for these absolute goofballs of these characters, and I think you have to. I don't know that it always works, but it does here. It
Hmm.
so does here.
Absolutely. Cult classic, good stuff. I would say because of how much I enjoy it, tis a whale.
I think it's a whale. I like it. Maybe doesn't totally stick the landing, but it's still good throughout.
Yeah, it's just I would argue just strongly, the case of Whale because of how much it's enjoyable. It's
Mhm.
funny. It's so memeable. There are so many good memes and gifs that came out
Mhm.
of this movie. It's just you could put it on in the background and have it on. You could sit back and watch it and laugh at the lunacy of it all. It's enjoyable. It's also one of those live action reboots that really isn't hurting the original by any means. It did enough different
Right.
things that it stands on its own. So
Mhm.
yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with most of that. Like it's a whale for me, except I like to skip some parts.
Sure.
Skip.
Yeah,
We're good.
sure.
Yeah.
Did you ever think it was kind of weird that like the places that he puts the little band-aids are like the only places on his face that he didn't have hair? Why were you shaving that
Yes.
to begin with, dude?
Yes.
It was weird. I always wondered.
Yeah. I mean, I
Um,
just chalk it up to him not knowing what he's doing,
fair.
but
Fair.
yeah.
I think that's it though. I mean, do you have anything else? Like there's it's the Grinch after all. There's not like a great deal to get into.
Uh, Not really. We talked about most of it. I guess the only thing we haven't really mentioned is like in my mind, the beginning of this film works really hard. You learn a lot. They set the
Mhm.
tone for a lot of themes really early, really fast. And then the rest of the film is able to sort of coast on that setup,
Mhm.
which I think is a good structure, but it like I've noticed that when I'm watching the film, I'm very engaged in the first like 45 minutes. And then the last part of it, I'm like, I'm still engaged. I'm still having fun. But I definitely like sit back more and
Mhm.
like because it falls into a more predictable pattern and things just sort of like like the dominoes they set up in the act one naturally fall into place in the rest
Mhm.
of the acts. And it's really quite impressive how much they set up in that first act and then how much follow through they get
Mhm.
in the rest of it.
Interesting. Yeah. How do we feel about the song?
Where Are You Christmas?
Yeah.
Or okay. I'm very torn.
Same. 'Cause
I'm very
I
torn.
think it's a pretty song, and I get the sentiment. Why is it here? This isn't a musical.
Oh, I like that she sings it. I especially like that it's short and sweet.
Uh huh. I knew you would.
I'm torn on the execution
Uh huh.
because I think that actress probably did have a pretty decent singing voice, but for whatever reason, they didn't, like, help her. She sounds like she doesn't hear the music. If they if they played her like this is the thing. Like, as a singer, sometimes there is a melody line in the music that you just follow. You sing the notes of whatever instrument is playing the notes you're supposed to be singing. Sometimes it's just you carrying that entire melody line. There are no instruments playing the notes that you are singing. I think they did that to her. Like, that's way harder to do, and also, like, totally not necessary. Like, you could give her, like, a little earpiece or even just play it, like, around her and edit it out later. Like, there are ways for her to hear the song and sing it, and it kinda sounds like she listened to it a couple of times, and they told her to sing it on set. And so it's super, super sweet that it's
Mm.
this raw, sort of like little girl voice who's just singing a sad song about not understanding what Christmas is about. Like, I like that artistic choice. They could have had a slightly better performance of it. Like, as someone who listens to music a lot and like sings and, well, sings, knows a little bit about voice, she could have done a better performance of it, and I feel like I don't know if going off key or falling flat that many times really improves the scene. I think having a natural rise and fall and occasionally maybe falling a little bit off, that's cute because it's just her being a girl. She's not a professional actress at this moment, it's her being Cindy Lou Who, right? I
Mhm.
like that. It was a little too much. It was like every other note she was not hitting, and that was annoying.
Mm.
Like, I get annoyed at that instead of feeling sad about the fact that she's going through an emotional thing. So, their emotional response isn't what they want because the execution isn't what it probably should be.
Gotcha. So you're not annoyed that this character broke out into song in a movie that isn't a
No,
musical. You're more
no.
annoyed that the song was not technologically, no, not technologically, I'm sorry, was not technically successful or good.
And that doesn't have to be perfect. I actually think it's really charming that it's not perfect, but it should have been better.
Musical lovers. Don't know what to do with you. But that was, I mean, that's a fair analysis. I would not have caught any of that, so good stuff. I don't know where I'm at with it because I can't say. I don't know. They allow Grinch to sing his song. I feel like that's kind of
Mhm.
different since he's like borderline breaking the fourth wall and having fun
Very
with that, and
often,
the
yeah.
other characters aren't. And then Cindy Lou, who's just breaking out the song. She does like activate a little music box, so there is kind of an amount
Yeah,
of
briefly.
believability. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm torn on it because it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere and then nothing else comes from it. So whatever.
Cute. I think it's a little, like, I think it's very Whoville for this introspective child to be, like, feeling sad about Christmas
Hmm.
and to
I guess that's
ponder the
fair.
question of, like, I don't feel Christmas this year, and I feel really sad that I don't feel Christmas, but I still also wanna know the answer. Like, I'm not ready to give up just yet, but I'm also feeling a little
Hmm.
lost. All of that is communicated effectively in that song, so I like it.
That's fair. Yeah, good point. 'Tis a whale, fun stuff. Merry Christmas, everybody. Are you
Ooh.
excited to watch the computer animated Illumination Studios Grinch next week, even though Christmas will be
I'm
over?
ready to have I'm ready to have my questions answered. Yes.
You have questions
Yes.
about
Like,
that
why?
movie? Oh, like why? Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know if it's going to answer that specific question, but otherwise, have a good holiday, everybody. Bye.
Bye.